Guys, welcome to the Legends here. Welcome back to another video. So basically, I just did this literally an hour ago. Not even an hour ago, like 5 minutes ago. Just finished. Checked the recording, and my audio was not on. So that was annoying. Anyway, so I should actually start checking these things. So Naruto and this, he's gonna have backstory. This. Let me just get this over with. Backstory. Morgan dies having his power after having his power absorbed by the Holy Grail. Holy Grail locks up because that was the last time it could be used. As in, Naruto, not Naruto, Morgan would be uh sucked into a portal. Instead, his soul would be pushed into a portal where she'd meet Sage Six. Sage Six would explain everything, and things go just like that. I know I'm going fast with this, but I just recorded this and I spent an entire hour on it, so I'm not in the best of moods. Anyway, Naruto, Morgan, but then, he'd actually wait a few thousand years. He'd see the battle between Hashirama and Madara, and just because I feel like it, when they died, he'd actually speak to their souls, because he was there when they both died. As Hashirama being the first to die, he would have spoken with them, learned his story, and all of that would have happened. They would have actually become friends. See, Madara would have spoken, as Madara would have actually learned his story, and Madara would also respect him because he's a strong warrior, just like him. As they would become friends also. They would actually spar from time to time, while Morgan was waiting for Naruto to be born after the sage had explained everything. So, anyway. Also, the sage also brought Morgan there to stop the reincarnation cycle of Ashura and Indra, but he couldn't actually speak to either Ashura or Indra because they were too busy fighting with each other as souls, because that's how it works. Like, they were so focused on stopping each other that they literally ignored any and all other concepts but hatred, vengeance, and revenge. So, Morgan would Morgan would actually have to get help, as he had to ask the sage himself to stop them from arguing before they reincarnate again. As the sage's spirit would then come out, as he and Morgan would separate the two. Morgan going with Indra, and the sage going with Indra, Morgan going with Ashura. Because Indra was the whole reason this happens because Indra was jealous. So the sage would actually speak with Indra, and Morgan would speak with Ashura, as they'd speak with them, telling them that this whole fight is pointless and you're only destroying the world, making hatred run rampant. So they would actually stop fighting. As Ashura and Indra would stop reincarnating. Instead, they would just hang out with the Sage of Six Paths while watching over their own plans. As Ashura would begin to feel saddened by the disappearance of the Senju clan, as Indra would help his brother grieve, while he himself would feel sad as the Uchiha clan was slowly being isolated. and ostracized for the Sharingan and their incredible emotional mentality. Well, emotion, the mentality of emotion, where they basically only think with their emotions. I say we begin to be ostracized by this because it would start causing a lot of accidents to where people were dying a lot. As the Uchiha clan would be exiled to the outside of the village, but not technically still a part of the village, but not a part of the village. As the Uchiha clan would still plan the coup, but we'll get to that later. Just because I want it to be, just because I want it to happen, and I don't want to see Ashura sad, because that sounds weird. Naruto is going to be a part Senju. He's going to be 25% Senju. Tsunade is going to be his grandmother. Kushina is going to be half Senju. And Minato is still going to be whatever he is. I'm not sure if Namikaze is an actual bloodline or it's just the name. But anyway, well, he's born just normal. Third Hokage's wife is still killed. Naruto is used as bait. Kushina is still taken away, so Nine Tails is unsealed. Minato would still do all that. But Nine Tails, he'd actually be broken out of Genjutsu by purely the presence of Mori Jin. Because his godly presence eliminates all sorts of illusions that are nearby him, making him immune to Genjutsu in general. Because he's a supreme being. And because I wanted that to happen. As Kurama would actually feel a bit scared. As he'd begin to try to run, but this is when Minato would actually do the Reaper Death Seal. As he'd be stuck there, as Kushina put her chakra with Minato's chakra, and it would have been sent into the seal, as she would have died. And Minato would have died due to the Reaper Death Seal. As Kurama would actually be inside of Naruto, and because I wanted it to happen, and because Naruto's soul needed a vacant spot, or had a vacant spot, because Ashura and Indra stopped reincarnating, Sasuke is going to be the reincarnation of Madara, and Naruto is going to be the reincarnation of Hashirama. Because I want them to have that same rivalry, but I don't want them killing each other. So, yeah. And as for Morijin's artifacts, he's gonna have Yaoi with him. The cloud, and the cloud is going to be the crown, and the dragon armor are going to be in the same place. Just different locations of that same place. Well, the cloud is going to be in a different location than the other two. But yeah. So at this moment, Morijin would be pretty limited. And he wouldn't have enough power yet to talk to Naruto. As we skip to after he moved out, Naruto would actually be attacked literally the day he moved out of the third Hokage's house by about 5 villagers. But his skin would be too durable, so they wouldn't be able to hurt him. They just kind of have to hold him there in like a circle. They'd basically just have him trapped there in a circle to where he couldn't actually walk away, but they couldn't hurt him at all. So eventually they'd get tired and walk off because they were drunk. And, they were drunk, they'd walk off. Naruto would walk home with no sort of scratches at all. Kind of confused because the villagers were just yelling dumb nonsense because they were drunk. So Naruto would actually, go to sleep, wake up the next day. This time, he'd be attacked by ninjas because they realized his skin was too durable and that just fueled the thinking that he was a demon. So they would actually continue beating on Naruto, but they wouldn't do anything. Well, villagers wouldn't, the ninjas would. The ninjas would begin to beat on Naruto, as Naruto would actually feel this pain, and he'd be kind of confused by it because it's the first time he felt pain. That's nothing he'd ever done before felt like this. That's basically he never actually felt pain because they were using chakra enhanced weapons. So they were placing chakra into the kunais and swords and well, uh, katanas. Well, you know what I mean by swords, like tantos, katanas, and but just because I want it to be that way, there was just a random samurai there because I want there to be a samurai in the Leaf Village, and he has a naginata or a naginata, and he decides to stab Naruto with it. He stabs him in the shoulder, which under normal circumstances that would have cleaved his arm off because the blade of a naginata is much bigger than someone's shoulder. But because of plot and because of tail-based chakra, it wouldn't cut his arm off, but he would keep it there, so he couldn't do anything with his right arm. And it would stay like that for about a week because of how much damage the naginata had done to the shoulder. But they'd still continue beating on him until eventually he got tired of it. As Nine-Tails chakra would erupt from him as he'd slaughter literally everyone there. Well, except for one dog-faced Ambu we all know and love. As he wouldn't have been part of this, he actually was about to interfere himself, but he noticed the Nine-Tails chakra, so he stayed back. As he could feel himself angry at the sight of the Nine-Tails chakra, but he'd calm himself, remembering that this is only a child who has the Nine-Tails within him. He's not the Nine-Tails. So he would calm himself down, keep his composure, and just watch this would happen. He would feel no remorse for these villagers at all because they were attacking the child. So after Naruto would leave, he would pass out. The Anbu would have dealt with the bodies, and he would have taken Naruto to the hospital. While Naruto was knocked out, he would actually have met Hashirama. As Hashirama would actually have said, well, Hashirama would have actually talked with Naruto and trained Naruto. Naruto would have wood release, but because I don't like just having wood release, he'll have something I'll call plant release. I'm not sure if this is an actual release, but I've never heard of it before in actual Naruto, so I'm going to keep it as my own made-up release because I like plant release and not just wood release. And with this plant release, he can make essentially turrets out of plants. He can make plants that shoot fireballs. He can make plants that shoot ice. He can make plants that heal. He can make those weird chomper plants from Mario. He can make all kinds of plants. He can make traps out of his plants. He's kind of like the vine benders from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He can make vines like that. He can make vines like Ibarra does from My Hero Academia. He can do basically anything with plants. He can do anything he wants with plants. But he has to have enough training to do it. So, the only thing limiting him is his ability to train. As he'll train for Hashirama he'll train Hashirama until he turns 8, where he would have mastered all of his wood style abilities except for those in the Scroll of Sealing. And which there were a lot of wood jutsus in the Scroll of Sealing. Well, there were the most powerful wood jutsu were in the Scroll of Sealing, so his wood style is not that strong. It'd be about as strong as Yamato's. So yeah, so Naruto would actually have well, Naruto would have actually just well, Naruto would have trained with Hashirama over these past few years. Well, not skip till he's 8, skip till he's 6. He'd still be training with Hashirama at this time, as we'd skip to, well, him returning home from buying groceries one day with the rent money. The the rent keeper, the housekeeper, well, not the housekeeper, but the, uh, what was it called? The owner of his apartment, like the owner of his apartment complex, was actually nice to Naruto because I want Naruto to have the money to buy actual groceries and not spam eat ramen all the time because that's not a good thing to do. So he's gonna love ramen just as much, but he's not gonna eat it as often because Hashirama's gonna tell him to eat healthy. So he's going to eat healthy. As when he gets back to his house, he sees that it's burning. As he actually, instead of confronting the villagers, he would be really sad about this, but instead of doing that, he, being smart, would actually go to the third Hokage. As he tell them that the villagers burned down his house, as the third Hokage would be absolutely pissed when he heard this. So he actually called a meeting right then and there. I mean, an urgent meeting, like a war council meeting. So everyone would come into the meeting room thinking this is some sort of war council or something. As in, the third Hokage would be absolutely pissed, would have full bloodlust going, but he wouldn't amplify it. He'd just be it. He'd have it at the point to where they could tell he's serious about this. As he'd say, who burned down? Why am I getting reports of someone burning down a building? As the council members, well, some of them would snicker, others would be confused, and others would just not say anything. As the third Hokage would get more serious with it as he'd yell, why is there a house burning in my village? As then everyone would be a bit shocked because they're used to a pushover perusing. So the the counselor would explain that it is the quote unquote demon's house, and he'd get even more angry as he'd say, what demon? We don't have demons here. We have Naruto. He's not a demon. He's a human just like the rest of us. He just has a nine-tailed seed within it. As then the councilman would say, no, that's not a human. He's a demon. As then the third Hokage would sigh, saying, well, I warned you. As then an Anbu would cut his head off. And this would be Sakura's father, and Sakura's mother would be absolutely devastated by this because her husband died in front of her. So, you know. As a dog-haired Anbu, well, a dog masked Anbu would appear. As in, he'd basically appear and disappear with the body, leaving no traces of anything whatsoever, as he disposed of the body with the rest of the villagers that were massacred earlier. Well, not, you know what, forget about what I said about the villagers earlier, but he disposed of the body, and, well, he'd go back to doing his normal guard duties. So, now, the Hokage. Then say, now, tell me, why did you burn down Naruto's house? As as one of the council members say, he doesn't deserve it. He's just a demon. As the third Hokage would be pretty mad about this, and he'd say, well, if I were to burn down your house and say you didn't deserve it, how would you feel? As this man would say, I'd be angry and sad because I had just lost everything I had. Exactly. So how do you think Naruto feels about this right now? Uh, why does that matter? He's just a demon. As in the third Hokage would raise his bloodlust through the roof, cracking the building, as everyone would be forced to their knees, some would be coughing up blood, and the Shinobi Council would be sweating. As then the third Hokage would then say, how many times do I have to tell you? He's not a demon. He's a child. He's a human, like the rest of us. There are no demons in this village. And next time I hear one of you calling him a demon, you'll be executed like Mr. Haruno over there. As then he'd release the bloodlust as they'd get back up into the chairs and they'd continue on. So, now give me a reasonable explanation as to why you burned down this child's house. As, well, no, not just this child's house, my house. Why did you burn down my house? As they'd all be shocked and they'd say, Lord Hokage, we didn't know this was your house. Well, you know now. Besides, why does it matter if it's my house or not? Who burns down a random house in the village? It's a village where everyone lives peacefully. You don't go around burning down random houses, do you? No, Lord Hokage. Then why did you burn down this one? Uh, as he wouldn't say anything. Well, this councilor wouldn't say anything. As in, well, the third would then say, okay, as since you want to take responsibility for this, as this man would then say, well, Hokage, I don't take responsibility for this. Then who told you to burn down this house? As this man would begin to look at Danzo, as then he'd just be killed. Well, he'd take a small glance at Danzo, as then he'd just die. He'd collapse. As then Ambu would check on him, and he'd say he's dead. As the councilors would be shocked, the third Hokage, already knowing what this meant, would look at Danzo. Danzo would actually feel a bit nervous because he realized he was too late in killing that man. So, the Hokage actually he'd he'd narrow his eyes at Danzo, but he wouldn't do anything just yet. Danzo would, in in his mind, he would sigh, but he'd still keep the same emotionless face he normally does on the outside. So, as then he'd say, "Is that all you needed, Hokage?" As Hokage would then say, "No, as there still need to be repercussions taken for those who decide to disrespect their Hokage, the village, and most importantly, well, no, disrespect their village, and most importantly, their Hokage." As then they, as most of these people were villagers, so the people who are villagers were actually shop owners and workers, so they lost their jobs and their shops were closed down. So, as they were repossessed by Leaf Village and turned into kunai shops and things like that. Although the Leaf lost a lot of economy from this, it was worth it to punish the people who decided that burning down people's houses was okay. So, as the ninja were just sent to prison or stripped of their ranks and being put back to Chunin or Genin. The Genin who were involved were just sent to prison. The Chunin had their ranks stripped and were put on probation. The Jonin had their ranks stripped and were put on a long probation. Well, they were put on a year's worth of probation and community service. Basically, community service in this is D rank missions. So they'd have to do D rank missions for a year. well, nothing but derank missions for a year. Although this wasn't a peaceful time, no one was actually actively attacking the Leaf Village at all. So it would actually be, they could actually afford to punish these Oni in this way because no one had actually openly defied the Leaf Village. But, anyway, continuing on, Naruto would wake up in the hospital beside the dog masked Rambu, as he would have dealt with everything else. And, well, let's say, just because, we'll say Anko with this dog masked Rambu, as Anko would know who this Rambu is, as they'd basically be talking. Naruto would wake up to see, well, Anko beside his bed to his right, and the dog masked Rambu to his left. As he'd be confused, and he'd ask who they are. As they'd look at him, and they'd, well, introduce themselves. Kakashi, taking off his mask, would say, I'm Kakashi Hatake, personal guard of the third Hokage. As Anko would introduce herself as Anko Midarashi, special jonin of the Hidden Leaf Village. As Naruto would then say, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, it's nice to meet you. As Naruto would try to raise his hand, but he couldn't because of how sore his arm was. As he tried to raise his other hand, but he couldn't feel it at all. But he'd look over to his right arm, and he'd see that, well, there's a huge bandage over his shoulder. And then he'd remember that he got stabbed with a naginata, and, well, he was kind of stuck. His arm was kind of paralyzed for about 2 weeks. So, anyway, the third Hokage would then come in because he had received news that Naruto had woken up. So, the dog masked Ambu would actually put his mask back on, and he'd leave with Anko. Because I want Anko and Kakashi to be dating in this, because I don't want a depressed Kakashi. He's kind of boring and perverted. So, anyway, they'd leave laughing and talking like normal people would. So, the third Hokage would come in, and he'd say, hello, Naruto, as Naruto would say, hey, old man, how's it going? As the third Hokage would say, things have been good. How are you feeling? Naruto would say, fine, but I can't move my right arm. The third Hokage would just say, well, let's just hope it's not, well, let's just hope it'll heal soon. Naruto would just say, yeah, let's hope. As they smile, as they just smile at each other as they get to talk. And then we get to, well, a week later. Basically, so you know how, well, those of you guys who have watched Hunter x Hunter, Gon broke his arm. Well, you know how he just trained with the other arm for, I don't know, it was what? It was a week, I'm pretty sure. It was either a week or a month. I don't remember. But he basically broke his arm, and they went to get Killua back from his family because he left to do something. I don't remember what it was he left to do. But basically, he broke his arm, and they were trying to open the gate. So basically, he had to work out one arm because the other one was broken. And he just magically broke out of the cast, and his arm was magically healed in a week. basically, that's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen with Naruto. That Naginata should have cut his arm off. I'm gonna tell you that right now. From the shoulder down, his arm should have been gone. Or at the very least paralyzed. But because of Quiet and Naruto's chakra, I'm gonna let it stay there. Because I don't want him looking like Sasuke yet. Well, at all. Because I don't want him looking like Taijin. Okay? So Naruto Naruto get out of the hospital. As he begins to train under as he continues training under Hashirama to turn 8, each when he start the academy. As Naruto, well, the day the academy started would be the day of the Uchiha massacre. Hiruzen, already having a feeling Danzo was behind this, would actually just be that he'd be done. He'd be done with Danzo altogether. He'd be done with it. As he would have known Danzo was behind this incident involving Naruto's house burning down, and behind the incident of Naruto's being beaten up by villagers, all of this happening. He'd know Danzo would be behind all of this. As at this point, he'd be tired of it. As that house was getting on his last nerves. The house got on his last nerves, but the Uchiha massacre was it for the Certified. He couldn't take any more of Danzo's shit. So he killed him. Well, he didn't kill him. He more just set Kakashi to kill him. But Kakashi didn't kill him on his own. He actually got Itachi to kill him before he left the village. Because third Hokage, he actually arrived soon after the Uchiha massacre, fast enough to beat Itachi out of the village as he'd been halfway there. As the third Hokage gave him one last mission, gave him two missions before he left. One was to spy for the Akatsuki, and two was to kill Danzo with the help of Kakashi. Because although Itachi could kill Danzo on his own, he could not kill all the Anbu that were there as well without dying in the process. So they actually teamed up, went to the Anbu hideout, actually went to the Root Foundation hideout because Danzo would be bunkering out there because he knew the third was too smart to let him get away with it. So he would be hiding out in the Root Foundation as Itachi and Kakashi would body all of the Anbu, killing them, and Itachi would kill Danzo with the Matarasu. Well, actually, no, he'd infinite Tsukiyomi Danzo, and he'd just die like that. As Kakashi would be lightning blading him through the heart while this would be happening, so yeah, he would be dead for sure. No Izanagi could save him because he didn't get it yet. And the Hashirama cells, he would actually have already had the arm ready for the implants. He was just waiting for the eyes to be collected. As Itachi would have killed the Anbu who would have collected the eyes, so there would be no eyes for him. And he cut off Danzo's arm, take it back, and Kakashi would take it back to the third Hokage where he would store it. Knowing, well, after learning what Hashirama cells could do, he would actually store the arm in order for it to be, well, dissected of its cells and used to heal, well, an important ninja or himself in the future, if it even has to come to that. So, anyway, Naruto starts the academy. He actually also starts his training with Mori Jin because Mori Jin had gained enough power to talk to him. In fact, let's go to that. First day of the academy. While the Uchiha massacre was happening, Naruto would be training out in the forest. Naruto would have trained so much he passed out, as he'd then be expecting Hashirama, as he'd then say, Grandpa Senju, where are you? As he'd hear an unfamiliar voice, he'd say, As this force would say, oh, he decided to sit this one out. So I decided to take this chance to, well, train you, or to talk to you. As Naruto would turn around as he'd seen Morihjin. Morihjin would actually, well, Morgan would actually be sitting on a giant yelly, just in the middle of his mindscape, like with not a care in the world. As Morgan would have remodeled his mindscape to look like his old world, so it isn't a sewer like it used to be, and the Ninetales isn't in a cage. It's on a collar, and Naruto's whole mindscape is a world, so Morgan would actually be in Korea. And Hashirama would be in China. He'd be in a forest in China. And the Ninetales would be in a forest in America because he wants to stay as far away from either of them as possible. Because he hates people. So he actually stays somewhere around the Ninetales actually decided to stay in the Great Plains. So the Ninetales has the whole United States to himself, while they stay in China and Korea. So Naruto actually pops up in Korea. But I'm not stereotyping here, but I wouldn't think Korea would look too much different from China. But it looked different enough to where Naruto could tell the difference between the two. So he'd feel something off because the billboards had different language and everything like that. As he'd meet Morihjin and all of this stuff would happen. And then they'd actually go to a dojo because they're not in a ninja force. They're in a city. As they'd go into a dojo, as they'd begin their training, Naruto would actually learn a lot of jutsu, not jutsu, but three taekwondo attacks. He learned how to summon yaoi, expand, contract, longen, and shorten him. Well, shorten it. As then, well, he'd actually just, he'd actually just, uh, he'd leave the mindscape. As he'd wake up, he'd see, he'd see two figures running through the forest. Well, running across the trees in the forest. As he with his enhanced reflexes, would actually, not enhanced reflexes, but enhanced speed due to Morgan's training, because he had a lot of speed, balance, and power training, and strength training. So he would actually be much faster than they are without using any sort of chakra at all. So Naruto would have mastered his powers, well, the powers that he has available, because he doesn't have the artifact yet. Well, he only has one artifact at the moment. So as he'd catch up to Kakashi and Itachi after they had killed all the Anbu. As they were going back to report to their Hokage. As Naruto would actually catch up to them and pass them, as they just noticed let's just say for Black, Naruto wears the exact same thing Jin does, just with ninja sandals instead of red high tops or whatever that is he's wearing. Whatever shoes he's wearing. You can't exactly copy these shoes. Well, no. Naruto wears the same shoes too because it doesn't look right with ninja sandals. So they just see a white and blue blur just go right by them. As they just say, what was that? As Itachi would activate his Sharingan as he'd begin basically tracing Naruto's movements. As he'd find where Naruto would be moving next, as he'd appear there and try to stop Naruto. But Naruto would just dodge out of the way, as he'd just be moving around literally everywhere to throw them off and to make them give up so they can continue going where they're going so he could follow them. So he would actually, this would actually work because Itachi would eventually distract them and they just go to the third Hokage's office. When they get to the third Hokage's office, Itachi would know that Naruto was still following them because he could sense the chakra presence. And Kakashi would know this is Naruto because they had literally talked the day before. Well, they had talked multiple times before. The third Hokage would recognize Naruto's presence instantly, as he'd tell Naruto to come out. And Naruto would come out this time, as he'd come out from the window where everyone seems to like just chilling in that window for whatever reason. Jiraiya does it, Kakashi does it, Sasuke does it, Naruto does it. Literally everyone has chilled in that window before. I don't understand what it is. Literally everyone has chilled in that window before, but anyway. So, well, Naruto comes out from that window like literally every OG character has done before. As he'd come out from the window, as he'd say, "Hey, old man." Oh, hi there, Kakashi. As Kakashi would say hello to Naruto, as he'd look at Itachi and say, "Who are you?" As Itachi would introduce himself, saying he's Itachi Uchiha, as he'd say, "How are you moving so fast?" Naruto would say, "I had actually just gotten done with some speed training, and I wanted to see how fast I was." He'd say, "Sorry for just messing around with you. I just wanted to see how fast I was." So, anyway, the Hokage would actually tell Naruto to come here, as the third Hokage would actually hand Naruto the scroll of sealing. As he'd say, "I'll give you 3 jutsu from the scroll of sealing. Any 3 you want." As Naruto would look through, as he'd get the Shadow Clone Jutsu, he'd also get the Deep Force Emergence, as well as the with Sage Mode summoning scroll. He'd get the hand side for summoning the scroll. And those would be the 3 jutsu he got. As then he'd tell Naruto to go home, which Naruto would just body flicker away. Because the plot sake, I would say, Hashirama knew the body flicker. Because I don't want Naruto to have to run everywhere. That's dumb. Basically, Naruto would go home, and she'd immediately begin practicing the Shadow Jutsu. She'd get it down pretty easily because Morgan on his own knew how to do regular clones, but seeing as some of his memories were blocked off because he doesn't have his crown or his dragon armor or his cloud yet, he doesn't remember the clone thing. So he just knows renewal taekwondo because that's embedded in the current body's memory. Well, in his current spirit's memory. As his spirit hasn't been united yet. So, Naruto actually, not Naruto actually, he actually waits till the next day to start practicing the wood jutsu. And Naruto, I'm not sure if I said this already, but he has plant style. He can make fire turrets, ice turrets, and healing turrets, trap turrets, and literally any kind of turret you can imagine. Well, that would make sense in the ninja world. He can't make lightning turrets and all that because no plant has the ability to electrocute people. If it did, it'd just be frying itself. He can't make lightning turrets. He can make turrets that shoot wind blasts, though. As instead of shooting wind blasts out, it could actually create tornadoes. Or more, it just create a funnel, which will neutralize any and all jutsu that are coming towards it. So it's kind of like a shield. Now, the earth thing, I'm actually going to make that wood style. So this plant actually will naturally produce a large wooden wall. This wall would actually be made of ironwood, which is incredibly tough. And this wood would be flame resistant, and it'd be, well, acid resistant. So acid style would not work on it. The only thing that could actually destroy it would be lava style. As fire style wouldn't work on it either because it's fire resistant. Well, the only thing heat related that could destroy it. Of course, another wood style jutsu could destroy it, but where would you find another wood style user? Oh, that's right, there's Yamato. But we're not talking about him. He's irrelevant. Anyway, as we see one, he actually does get the wood summoning contract, and because I want this to happen, he actually gets basically, you know how Hashirama can summon the 1,000 headed Buddha? Let's say they develop from, well, smaller versions of themselves, kind of like how the toads do. So Naruto actually, instead of getting a mini 1,000 handed Buddha, we'll say he starts with a 100 handed Buddha. So he actually has to train with his Buddha. By the time he turns 15, it should have 1,000 hands. Well, it actually should have 1,500 hands because I wanted to. And at this point, he is 8. So, anyway, I'm gonna stop after the bell test. So, let's get to, well, actually, go on to, well, a couple weeks after this whole training thing, when Naruto has gotten all this stuff mastered, Naruto would actually go to the third Hokage to just visit him. As well, this day, the Monkey King Enma would have actually said something strange with Naruto. So he would have summoned himself to Hiruzen, transformed himself from his staff form, as he'd walk over to Naruto, as he'd say, "There's something weird about you." As the realm of the monkey summoning, I'm gonna say, is from Morigen's original world. So Morigen's original world and the land. I'm just gonna call the summoning place Land of Monkeys because that's what I want to call it. And so Naruto, well, he's actually gonna go into Naruto's mindscape because he sensed a strange power coming from his body, and he's going to check his spirit through his mind. As he comes into his mind, he finds where the strange power is coming from, and it's from Morijin, because this monkey would be a descendant of, well, you know the false Monkey King he fought? The one that Morijin actually respected after fighting him and participating in that whole war against the those angel things where he and Pandora fought together. Basically, he's a descendant of that guy. Because after Mori disappeared and all those millennia had passed, that guy became king once again. He died. He passed it down all the way down to Monkey King Enma, who would be his great grandson. So Monkey King Enma would bow down to Moriten as he'd say, Lord, well, Lord, Moriten's your name, which I cannot tell you what that is. You can try and Google it. You will not find it. You have to find it in the comic. And I don't remember which chapter it is. Well, you have to find it in the webtoon. And the webtoon is so long. You will not find it. Just telling you right now. You will just have to stumble upon it while you're reading it. But anyway. Also, can you guys tell me some Morrigan 3 Taekwondo moves in the comments down below because I don't remember most of them. So, anyway. Uh, Monkey King Enma actually teaches Naruto the monkey clone technique and the monkey fighting style. The monkey style of fighting. As Naruto would have Hashirama's fighting style, the Senju fighting style. Well, like the Wood Sage fighting style, but yeah. Actually, he hasn't learned the Wood Sage fighting style because he hasn't learned Wood Sage Road yet, so no. He just have the Senju fighting style. As Hashirama would have realized he's a descendant of him by now because he has a wood style. But he wouldn't have told Naruto this yet because he knows that his parents are in the seal. And he would have talked to his parents already. And all of that would have already happened. So, as Kushina would have known that Hashirama was her, what, her great grandfather was, yeah, her great grandfather. So, yeah, she would have been surprised to see him there, but she would have been happy to talk to him because she never actually met him because he died before she was born. So, anyway, so Naruto would have, well, Naruto would actually learn from Monkey Enma the monkey fighting style, the clone. I actually have to hurry this up because my earbuds are going dead. So, anyway, Naruto would have learned all this. Naruto would have actually just, well, he would have actually learned all these things. He actually would have found the two artifacts after looking around. As these two artifacts would go to him, he would not have mastered the dragon armor yet. He would have unlocked an additional 40% of his power and the rest of his memories. Well, except for maybe 10%, maybe. Because he hasn't found the cloud yet. But he actually ends up finding the cloud the next day while just casually walking around because he notices this strange purple cloud in the sky. And this cloud seems to be striking someone with lightning, despite the fact it's a clear day. And this is the only cloud that's doing this. As he'd reach out, he'd stick his hand out towards this cloud, as this cloud would come towards him. As then he'd realize it's the final artifact as he hop onto the cloud, as he'd unlock the rest of his memories. Morrigan would actually limit the flow of his power because if he had full access to his power, he would probably destroy the village without trying to. So he can only use 10% of Morrigan's power, or Morrigan's real power, which is equivalent to, I don't know, Super Saiyan 2 Goku. Pretty sure that'd be a good scale. As he could very easily destroy planets 100%. So, I'm going to say his power scaling would be about Super Saiyan 2 Goku. Where he'd have some struggle to stronger planet, but not much. But he can't use 10% of Moijin's power for more than about 5 minutes before he passes out. And using that much power would make the planet shake. So, it would attract a lot of unwanted attention. So yes, I'm putting limiter on him for now, as overpowered as I made him. He still has all the plant style things, so he's still about as overpowered as I wanted him to be. So. Anyway, let's skip to the Genin exam, where he'd actually fail on purpose because he did not like Mitsuki at all, and he wanted to get rid of him. He'd do everything knowing full well what he was doing, Third Okage knowing what he was doing. So, he'd actually go body Mitsuki and do all that. As we skip to the bell test, Naruto Naruto's life would be ramen training his great grandpa Hashirama and his master Boyjin. As everyone would be a bit confused by this. Also, the teams are the same because I don't feel like changing them, and I need to hurry this up. So the teams would be the same. Naruto would be well. Naruto Naruto would be well. Well, he'd say the same thing in canon because he likes ramen, he does all that. His goal is not to become Hokage. His goal is to fulfill his promise to the Sage of Six Paths and save this world from the cycle of hatred. As everyone would also be confused by this, but he just said don't worry about it, as they just don't say anything. So Naruto would just continue on. As we continue on to the bell test, while Kakashi said don't eat, but Morihei being a glutton and Naruto being an even bigger glutton, and so would Hashirama being also a glutton because he's a senju, he would absolutely have to eat or he would just pass out. So he eats. I mean, he eats and he eats and he eats. He's worse than the Saiyans, honestly. He eats about twice as much as Goku does. Just telling you that right now. So he eats a lot. Then he goes to the bell test. He actually comes there late because of how much food he ate and how long it took him to eat it all. And Kakashi would have already been there, as he would have been surprised that someone was later than he was. So he'd actually be impressed by Naruto. But, seeing as Naruto and Kakashi already knew each other, Naruto would have known he was going to be late, so he didn't try to come on time anyway. So Naruto would just say, Kakashi didn't say, I already knew you were going to be late. I'm not really sure why they tried to come early. And Kakashi would just laugh and he'd say, you're right, Naruto. I wasn't going to be on time. There was no way I'm waking up at 5 in the morning. Naruto would say, same here. As they'd laugh as they get the bell test on, as is the same as canon the first time. Except Naruto would say, he's fight. No, it wouldn't be the same as canon at all. Naruto would actually go to 5% of Origins power, as he would have actually had sentries set up everywhere, because all he needs to do is be in contact with the ground, and he can make a sentry literally anywhere in the area. Anywhere in about let's say a mile radius. So he put sentries literally everywhere. So anytime Kakashi body flickers, he could run into a trap, he could run into a fire blast, an ice blast, a funnel, or a tornado, or literally anything. So Naruto has made the whole battlefield a minefield. So Kakashi's kind of trapped. So Naruto actually basically has made a minefield for Kakashi, as he'd actually distract Kakashi by trying to use pure Taekwondo, as he would actually combine the three styles into something I'd call uh, the ultimate taijutsu. I was just gonna call that the uh, the Monkey King taijutsu or something, or the taijutsu of the Monkey King or something. As Naruto would basically begin to, he'd actually be bodying Kakashi with this taijutsu style because Kakashi cannot defend himself against Taekwondo, because Taekwondo, being mostly kicks, and Kakashi mostly throwing punches, would have no idea how to defend against the range of a kick. So he would actually he'd get bodied, like, pretty bad. As in, he'd actually try to substitute himself and end up falling into one of Naruto's traps. As he'd basically be hung up like Naruto was when he baited him with Kakashi baited him with the bells of cannon. As Kakashi would cut himself out. And then he'd fall into a sinkhole where Naruto would use the 1,000 years of death on him. just for satisfaction. And in the series, Kakashi and Anko are dating, soon to be married, but dating because I want them to be. And I don't want to alone with Kakashi. And anyway, I'm just imagining Anko having to massage Kakashi's legs after this battle because of how much pain he's going to be in. Just letting you know, Morihjin has like long, sharp fingernails. Like I'm not even gonna lie to you. But anyway, they'd continue fighting. Kakashi would get 1,000 years of death because I want him to be. And well, he kind of feel raped and violated because who wouldn't when it's 1,000 years of death? It's literally the worst jutsu in all of mankind. Rather get hit with the sexy jutsu than the, well, 1,000 years of death. But, reverse hair version too. So, the shame of that would be much better than the 1,000 years of death. So, anyway, Naruto would have actually grabbed the bells while Kakashi was jumping around trying to handle his pain because, yeah. Anyway, he tossed one bell to Sasuke, one to Sakura, as the test would be over, as Kakashi would say, while crying on the ground, you passed. As they would just leave Kakashi there, crying, until that evening, where Anko had actually come to the training ground looking for him because they were supposed to go on a date that day. She'd be pretty irritated as she'd see him on the ground in pain, as basically she asked him what happened, as he'd explained about Naruto basically trapping him, then putting him in quicksand, and then using 1,000 years of death on him. And he hasn't been able to move since. As she'd laugh at him, as she'd put him on her back, as she'd take him home. And this is one of the ending it all. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and leave suggestions for a ship in the comments. Anyway, peace. Well, what is this? 1 second.